Alright, so welcome back to Max Easy Lessons. This is Old Higue by McWatt. If you're new to the channel, please feel free to connect with the channel, subscribe, keep your bell notifications on because we will be doing largely English A and English B on the channel, and of course I have been thinking about adding more, so keep your bell buttons on. You never know which other subject may come up that may be of help to you. Let's get straight into a reading of Old Higue by McWatt. Old Higue. You think I like this stupidness? Gallivanting all night without skin, burning myself out like cane fire to frighten the foolish? And for what? A few drops of baby blood? You think I wouldn't rather take my blood seasoned in fat, black pudding like everyone else? And don't even talk about the pain of salt and having to bend these old bones down to count 1,000 grains of rice. If only babies didn't smell so nice. And if I could only stop hearing the soft call of that pure blood running in new veins, singing the sweet song of life, tempting an old dry-up woman who'd been holding her final note for years and years, afraid of the dying hum. Then again, if I didn't fly and come to that fresh pulse in the middle of the night, how would you, mother, name your ancient dread? And who to blame for the murder inside your head? Believe me, as long as it have women giving birth, a poor old Higue like me can never dead. Now, this was one of the poems that is on the CSEC English B list for 2019, 20, 21, 22, 23. I think it's up to 23. You can find it also in A World of Poetry, which is edited by McWatt and Hazel Simmons McDonald. So let's get into the analysis of the poem. In this poem, we find that the persona, Old Higue, is of a Guyanese folklore. Now, in Trinidad, it's also called a Sukayant, and forgive me if I'm mispronouncing that. And in Jamaica, we have a story that is very similar. The old woman, the cat woman and the spinning wheel, Now, the Old Higue in this case is the one that we want to talk about. The poet changes the traditional way of storytelling by making the persona to be the Old Higue. The persona, who is the Old Higue, talks about how difficult it is to be in that particular position, how difficult it is to be classified as an Old Higue, a folklore character. The persona speaks in Creole and mentions how much work it is to fly around, how hard it is for her to fly around. She uses a simile, burning myself out like cane fire, and this describes how exhausting it can be. I mean, if you have ever seen a cane fire in action, you would understand that it lights quickly in the dry season and it only burns for a short period of time, but that heat is so intense. The poet makes the persona appear to have many similar qualities and traits that are similar to ordinary villagers with her taste for black pudding. The aspects of the myth, the folklore, the legend here is that the persona speaks about two things that is considered to be weaknesses of the whole Old Higue. One, it is where there is a rubbing of salt on her skin that she supposedly has removed, and the other is not being able to resist counting the salt grains. Now, we find rhetorical questions being used in the poem in so many ways. There is burning myself out like cane fire to frighten the foolish. And for what? A few drops of baby blood. You think I wouldn't rather take my blood seasoned in fat black pudding like everyone else? These are all examples of the rhetorical questions that are used in the poem. The persona here shows her frustrations in many ways, and her frustration centers around life itself. And the reader, of course, can relate to all of this. You are there and you are working very hard, and yet somebody comes and somebody tells this whole mystery around you and about you. And these are all foolish people saying stuff that are definitely not true. And when they say all this about you, there is little or nothing that you get in return for the hard work of living up to that image. You just want to relax like everybody else, but you're not able because of the perception that people have of you. Now, right away, we get the feeling that the poet is trying to make sure that the reader can understand what this Old Higue is going through, and of course, offer some amount of sympathy towards the Old Higue. Now, the second stanza is where the Old Higue begins to accept whatever it is that they're saying. And the Old Higue now begins to describe that it is hard to resist the blood of the babies. The Old Higue repeats the words soft in hearing the soft call of that pure blood running in new veins. This highlights the whole blessings of a child. A child has youth, a baby has youth, a baby has a type of energy that if it were so that the old Higue is as presented, then the old Higue would have needed that from the baby to survive. Now, this is in contrast to the image of the old Higue, which we get earlier on as an old, dried-up woman who's been holding her final notes for years and years. The last stanza, we find that the old Higue speaks to things that she is necessary, that she sees as necessary, as she is the one who is blamed then. Or sorry, she presents ideas that are genuine. Who else can you blame? Because as a people, we tend to want to blame everybody else for everything else. And so the old Higue speaks directly to the mothers, those who have their children and something goes wrong with their children. And the old Higue speaks and says, who are you going to blame if I do not assume this role that you present of me? And so we realize then that the old Higue is often blamed for the thoughts of these women. And those thoughts that comes up about her or her character, she has no control over this. And she accepts that as long as women are giving birth, then she, the old Higue, will remain as an old Higue, as the source of the blame for whatever happens to the child. Now, the poem is done as a monologue. Now, this monologue deals with the old Higue as a whole and the desire for blood of babies and the fact that as long as life is, the old Higue, the story of the old Higue is going nowhere. Now, there are literary devices in the poem. There is simile, there is rhetorical questions, there is repetition, and then there is alliteration. Of course, the theme, the overall theme, the overarching theme in this is the supernatural. Now, when we talk about the simile, we talk about the cane fires, and that is compared to the old Higue here. We talk about the rhetorical questions already, and we talk about the repetition of the word soft. We also talk about the alliteration. And in this case, the alliteration emphasizes the dependence of the old Higue, that whole idea of having an addiction to the sweet blood of the baby. You may want to pay attention to these important words that follow. There is the stupidness, and this is clearly a Caribbean phrase that highlights the frustration or scorn of an individual. Then there is gallivanting, which talks about someone who plays around having fun, idling, basically. There is a pure blood, there is a pure blood running in new veins. Babies are often associated with purity. They are pure, they are true, they are real, and they represent innocence. Holding her final note for years and years, afraid of the dying hum. This is also important as it tells us that the old Higue has been living desperately for a very long time with all of this that is enforced on her as an individual. When we talk about the mood or the atmosphere of the poem, we're talking about a reflective mood. It's the old Higue who is looking back on things that have been said of the past, of the present, and reflecting also on what will come in the future. Now, the mood is there. The tone of the poem is reflective. The tone of the poem is slightly bitter and resigned, and she accepts that the cycle of her life cannot change. Now, thank you so much for watching the video, and I'm going very quickly as I can with these poems. Always remember that this is not the final analysis. Listen carefully to what your teachers also have to say about the poem and about how the poems can be analyzed as well. Combine all of them, keep an open mind, and guess what? You will be on your way to understanding the CSEC poems. Thank you so much for watching.